Yeah.
Okay.
You ready?
Oh, sure.
Okay. I make a motion to open the meeting. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Marshall?
Aye.
Trustee Lightgev?
Aye.
Trustee Lampier?
Aye.
Mayor Plummer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm wondering, do we want to open up that door there in case anybody?
Oh, that's-
walks in?
Got an echo.
Getting an echo. Okay. Everybody hang on for 1 second, please. Is that better?
Thank you,
Hopefully.
Zach.
Is the Legion cooking or something?
You know, I never know with them. I assume if I smell something, they're doing something.
They're doing something.
Do we
Okay.
want to hit the 3 items before we go to the budget, so we can at least knock
Yeah,
those
but
off?
hang on 1 second here.
Yeah, no, I just was going to
I
ask.
know, I was gonna, you say mind meld, we just had the same thing.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, let's see. So does any board member have a conflict of interest or anything to disclose regarding the agenda items before us?
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
And I do not. Okay. Do you want to kind of give cliff notes on the
Sure.
open meeting compliance?
To the non-existing public and attendees online, if you have any questions, raise your hand or put it into the Q&A. And everybody be nice to each other.
And state your name and address, please.
Oh, please
Yeah.
state your name and address, no matter which
Exactly.
format you're using.
Okay, so the purpose of this meeting actually was, it was a request, or came out of the last discussion of our budget. This is an additional budget meeting at the request of Trustee Marshall and also Trustee Lightgev. And, the action was that they were going to reach out to our treasurer, to try to get additional information, and they were looking at different approaches to the budget. And just for the record, we do have an adopted tentative budget. And so this is now just an opportunity with a hard stop no later than 5:15 for us to just revisit some of this in this workshop. But before we get into the budget, we do have a couple other items that we could cover, I think, pretty quickly. Do you want to start with Bernard Dunnigan?
Correct. I included the quote I received from Bernard Dunnigan. You see where they quoted 5,000, but she also said she felt that was going to be an over amount. But again, I didn't want to move forward in getting the estimates on the bands and bonds without board approval. So to move further on that, I need the board to authorize me to talk to her.
So instead of the 2,000 to go up to 3?
Yeah, I needed to go to.
Just add the 3. on
Yeah,
top of
add
that.
the 3.
Just tentative.
Make
Yeah.
it a total of 5.
Yeah.
If I may.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at the letter here, and I see this is a $5,000 preliminary financial service in order to get the presentation, and then there would be another fee based on the type of bond we choose to have, or band that we're issued. $3,500 for one issuance, 1 year of bond anticipation notes, ban, or $7,500 for a consolidated serial bond. To me, and I'm not extremely familiar with municipal bonds, but the $5,000 seems a little bit like we're paying for a sales pitch, and don't mean to offend anybody by putting it in those terms, but I would be interested in seeing if, since we are also paying for the service based on what we would buy, I'd like to see a couple of other quotes, perhaps looking at the people that the town use. I don't know if it's the same firm or if it's a different one, or possibly from some other vendors as well.
We can, absolutely, the board can interview financial advisors. We've done our homework on this in the past. I will say Bernie Donegan has been used by most of the municipalities local. I wouldn't say it's a sales pitch, it's their financial services. And before you issue debt of any kind, you need to have a financial advisor. That's municipal law. So I just,
I mean, I don't have a dog in the fight. I mean, we need to have these services done. We need to have a professional firm provide the appropriate information for our municipality going forward.
correct.
You know.
And you also have a bond attorney. That's a separate attorney, and
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name.
Sitting in my
I know.
office right now, and he's been representing the village as
Right.
well since we went on in our last step.
In addition to this concern that I have and my desire to find another quote, given that we're looking at $5,000 plus other amounts based on the type of loan that we would be taking on, I'm also still hesitant to obtain this service before we have more finalization of the budget. We are, as you mentioned, operating under an approved tentative budget. And what Mr. Marshall and I have been talking about, and what I'm looking forward to talking about later on in this meeting, is a different approach to that budget. And I still feel that it's a little bit premature to be talking about the specific short-term loans until we have more progress made in terms of understanding those numbers.
Any other thoughts from other board members?
I'm willing to listen. It's not my strong suit, so and I know that it is part of Trustee Marshall's background, so I'm trusting the judgment of the board here. I don't, is there a typical, a hard stop as far as timing is concerned here? I know sooner is probably better, but are we?
Well, you got projects in the works that we need to know what we're doing financially.
Because we have to get back to vendors.
We need to get back to the
You know,
vendors
we have
with the
quotes.
back entrance.
Yeah.
We got South and Wood, they're waiting on us to make the determination for the engineering. So there's a lot of things, waiting on us getting the banning information. I mean.
It's how we can move forward.
Is it a competitive market typically, this bond and band?
It is,
Is
but
somebody
you're
gonna
really
do
going
better
with the
for
company
us?
that suits you. I mean, because the numbers, and there's a price tag to the service. That's all I can say.
So if you want to get more quotes, we certainly can get more quotes. Maybe we do that in the interim. That's something you want to do. to
And
get
that's
additional
something I
quotes.
can't put on my plate right
Yeah,
now. It will
yeah.
be 2 to 3 weeks out, which is
Yeah.
going to delay everything.
Yeah.
That's all
It'll-
I'm saying.
yeah,
To the
and we
board,
may-
because
we may
then they
lose
got
some
to
of
be
the vendors.
interviewed. They got to be interviewed, and
Yeah.
it's not just going to be me interviewing. I'm going to guess at this point, one of the
Mhm.
trustees is going to want to sit and talk to them as well to understand where they're coming from.
Mhm.
So it is something that's going to be not timely.
Yeah, and, again, we have, RFPs that have been responded to. We have the capital improvement project for South and Wood that was identified roughly 6 years ago. We have those responses. We have a $100,000 grant, and at some point, we are going to have to move forward, and, the discussion has been had with the board over the last couple of years, really, about how we would proceed. So we now have something new in the mix, as we know, for this particular workshop. Maybe we just table this for now, I guess.
That's fine.
And then bring it right back to the meeting next week based on the outcome of this meeting. Does that make
So
sense?
I guess the message to the bidders and everything is we're delayed.
Tell them that we're delaying again. I guess that's what I'm hearing
Because
at
I'm going
this
to guess
point.
we're going
We
to,
may lose some of the vendors. They may just walk away at this
How
point.
many vendors? Sorry.
well, getting the quotes has been very painful. First bids out for the back entrance, we got two bidding opportunities, nobody bid. Third time we did get 2. We went back to the table with them both because the amount was so high. And we worked it down with the one to get cost-effective pricing to the 218. So that's, on the table right now, but that's a ticking.
You may recall that was brought up during the budget presentation. This is an issue our projects aren't that big for our municipality. And, the vendors, they're just not going to wait. And sometimes the bids expire,
Yeah, you typically,
Yeah.
contractors' quotes will typically only run for about 30 days until they're revisited, or, they'll honor those numbers for it. After 30 days, then they probably want to read.
South and Wood, we bid out once, didn't get anybody. We
Nothing.
bid out again, added Sutherland. We did get a bidder, GPI, we only got one.
Yeah,
That was
and-
one.
And they're waiting.
Yeah, we're kind of on a short supply of consultants at this point that will,
Yeah.
entertain us because of, it seems the process that we keep dragging them through without any results.
Mhm.
And not everybody wants to continue wasting their time putting together bid packages without anything happening yet.
Share with me, with regards to this letter, the first paragraph's a little interesting. It says, "We would estimate at most an hourly total of 5,000. Towards the end, it says, "Could probably anticipate half that or less."
Right, but she's giving us because I told her I need a number,
Yep.
because I didn't tell her how much the board gave me, because they're going to come in less, I'm not going to set a total for them.
Yep.
And this is what she wrote. So she probably overestimated this, or was just so we're covered with whatever we
So this
budgeted.
is an hourly rate, it's not a flat fee.
Right.
And have we worked with Dunnigan and Associates in the
Yes.
past?
We
For
work with
many
them.
years, and they've also worked on the bond that we have
Yeah,
now.
they did the current
They're
bond.
really quite well known.
When was the last time they did the work that they're asking, or that we're asking them to do now?
When was the last bond?
8 years ago.
Yeah,
Okay, 8 years ago.
and they also did a presentation
They did a
last year.
presentation
For
a
the
couple
board.
years ago
Yeah.
to the board.
Do we have to follow the comptroller's guidelines for procuring contractors the same?
Yes, we always do, and we did when we went out and picked them as a vendor. We had gotten quotes, we interviewed financial advisors, we brought Bernie Donigan in, and it's in the threshold.
So that is still stands what we did a number of years ago.
Yeah, because these are professional services, you don't want to keep going out, because they have a relationship. Every year, they review our debt, and they give us the information, they provide updates, they work with us all year.
It's the same as appointing Scott Harder, the engineer, they're service-based, yeah. So,
They know the village, they know our
Yeah.
financials, they know our debt schedules, they have all that information already. You start with a new vendor, they got to start from scratch.
We're
So
starting
then-
from here rather than starting from back here.
Yes.
So let's take the next step then and ask just amongst us, the road and sidewalk project and the rear entrance project, we are all of the mind to get that done this year, or at least get those projects moving forward.
yeah, and because also both projects have outstanding grant funds that need to be utilized. We don't want to lose the money. And particularly with, well, each one has its own case.
Mhm.
The funding for the back entrance was granted, 6 years ago?
2017.
2017. So we really are in jeopardy of losing that if we don't use it. The dormitories are going to hold that forever. And the grant that we have for the sidewalks on South and Wood, that came from Senator Brooks' office, and I would like to be able to go back and make sure that we can get additional funds as needed to go forward. But I dare say that if we don't use the grant money we initially got, they won't give us any additional. So that's really kind of how it works in the world of grants with municipalities.
So the question, Justin, I know you and I had spoke about this earlier, in thinking about the $5,000 total, is that total currently embedded in the budget as an expense?
No, because it's not until,
It's not until.
it's not, well, in the newer version, I threw it in there.
Okay, thank you.
In the current budget, given the way the financials and everything are looking, I'm working on March as it is. I'm sure I can shift and cover that 5,000 for the budget.
On last year rather than,
Correct.
okay.
I can make that budget amendment and find the revenue for that.
The work won't necessarily be done until maybe after that point, but you can retroactively apply it to the.
Yeah, I issue a purchase order.
So then the next question is, I personally knew Bernie Donigan before he had passed. This is a friend that goes back a long time, and his wife Linda I knew. I didn't know them professionally through their municipal services, and I don't have any conflict. But I do know that they've been in the community for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't think with a quote like this, where they're trying to put it in front of us, their intent would be to drive it up to the $5,000 threshold, but rather do the work at an hourly rate that's probably competitive across the industry, otherwise they probably wouldn't have as long standing in the community and reputation as they do. Simply said, I see your point, Justin. It may be just given the time frame of some of these things that I think we all want to try to get done, and some of the money outstanding that we probably want to capture, though we have a lot of other budget issues to address. It may be appropriate to start the process, understanding we're taking a little bit of a leap of faith and risk that it might be priced beyond, but recognizing the firm in the past and the relationship that we've had 8 years ago.
Could I ask you, we did have a bill from Donegan when he previously came in, or when their firm previously came in to do a presentation. Do you recall how much that initial bill was before we had it reduced?
I want to say it was between 2,000 and 3,000.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't recall the exact amount, but that might
I
be a
can't
good
give you
benchmark for what it may cost. to
Exact, but I
send it
think
out.
it was between 2 and 3.
I guess the other thing that I'm thinking here is that, well, we are operating under the approved tentative budget until we have anything else in place, another approved tentative budget. I still have serious concerns about that, and I know that I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I feel that if we don't have something else that's better in place, we're losing an opportunity to go back and make sure that we feel confident about the figures that we're working with. And so I'm not eager to approve very many expenses at all until we have a different situation, a different document that gives us financial understanding. So we are operating under this budget. That doesn't mean that we have to approve the expenses that are budgeted for in that document. And I would prefer to be very, very judicious about each particular expense until we have a budget document that I feel better about. So at this point, I would not approve this, and I would not even approve the going forward to the chair replacement until we have a better tentative document at least.
Oh, boy.
Budget.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
let's address that item in a separate, separate on the agenda. Let's just stick with the quote for Donegan. We certainly could approve it and then not go forward. Is that possible?
Not if you want to get
I
projects.
No, but I'm saying based on what trustee Lightgeb is
Well,
saying.
if we understand we're taking out of the current village
It's
budget.
out of the current budget. It's out of the current
Our
budget.
expenses have been well under control in this current budget. Our revenues are coming in as stated. I don't foresee a problem with squeezing the 5,000 if needed out of this budget, but this, at the end of the day, you need these numbers to make decisions on these projects. You can't get the numbers.
We have 10 days, right? We have 10 days. And to Trustee Lightgib's comment, any adjustment to the tentative budgets can be addressed in a 10-day window of time.
Correct.
Right? A response back, this was sent March 28th. Zach, maybe this is a question to you. 5-day window of time, 6-day, 7-day window. By the time we address the tentative budget, we can put this forward to next week, talk through the budget, see where that goes, and then make the commitment.
So before you answer that, I mean, we're also, the weather's warming up, so now we have, you talked to that, about the contractors lining things up and how this
So
works.
one of the processes that
Yeah.
GPI would like to do before the canopy fills in, which
Which-
at this point, we're probably 50% of the way there,
Yeah,
is get aerial shots of the work, the areas that they're going to be working in for help mapping for these projects. We're on borrowed time at this point.
yeah.
Any day that we go over at this moment, I mean, we're almost to the point where, they won't be able to do the job that they're asking to do.
So this here essentially is saying, we're going to start the process with the financing to allow us to say yes to the GPI bid. And we can't say yes to the GPI bid until we know that we're going to have the funds to do it. The only way you have the funds to say yes is to start the process of issuing
To
debt.
get the numbers.
And then it comes back to the board, I think, really. Do we want these capital improvements to happen in our village?
That's the.
That comes right back to this board. And I know what my answer is. My answer is a definitive yes. These are projects that have been long deferred. These roads are in need of work. And I just cannot imagine that, as Zach, as you say, we're going to kick the can down the road again after how many years?
I mean, even if you decide you don't want to do the back entrance, you still need the banning figures for the,
For the road work, yeah, for sure.
so it's, no matter what you do, either approach on one number or two numbers, I need to talk to a financial advisor to give the information to the board.
Trustee Lightgib, with regards to then the tentative budget, whether or not it's the one we may talk about next or the one that's already been proposed, would you concur that we do need to get this road work done this year, independent from the back Village Hall project, and we will need a band or a bond to do it?
That's quite likely. I would still like to have a better understanding of the finances and what we're looking at with the budget before we commit to any direction. The thing that concerns me, and this is jumping around because I feel like these topics are connected since we're talking about our spending, is that we still, when I asked for the documents about the budget, I didn't have the list of capital projects that go further down the road. It's not about not paying for these projects, it's making sure that we fit in all of the projects for the next 5 years in a sustainable way that we want to do to make sure that we fit the village.
This was first proposed back in 2017. This is the future project. We have a working schedule that we haven't been able to follow through with for 6 years now.
The schedules have been presented.
Yeah, the
to
schedules have, yeah.
There's always been a schedule, and we just can't get anything done.
I understand the frustration, and that's why I'm hesitant on this item, because the conversations that we've had, we've gone from a 0% tax increase to something more like 9%. To me, it's not about not doing this project, it's about making sure that we're budgeting better. It shouldn't have been 0% for 2 years if we're trying to get these projects done. And I think that we're going to keep making the same mistake until we have better capital plans in place. So my pushback here, I know that it temporarily might seem like a pushback on this project, but I want a better understanding of our finances and starting out from the right things to make sure that our approach is sustainable now and in the future.
I believe with the reserves we're trying to establish would allow us to be able to follow through with these projects slightly less interrupted due to these conflicts of financing or budgetary.
And we've had that discussion that there's been almost $500,000 of taxpayer funds tied up that we haven't been able to access because, and that was brought up also in the budget presentation. And so there are aspects of those reserves, once they are properly repurposed, that we can use to essentially front money for grants or, do that, or purchase things, or, fund some additional projects for sure.
I understand what you're getting at. In order to be slightly more on top of a functioning budget, having the understanding of what each of those projects are going to cost so we can plan for them. In the last 2 years, a road project that should have been about $135,000 has gone up to about $600,000 to $750,000. How are we supposed to prepare for that if you can't get something done? So, it's a volatile economy environment right now. I don't know if you have a recommendation on how to prepare.
So let me put it a little different from somebody new coming on the board, right? I don't have easily a public document like the comprehensive plan or the LWRP or the active transportation plan that I can go online to Village Hall and pull down the long-term planning, right? I can't see all the various projects and the current anticipated expenses and how we may pay for them, or the fact that it'd be future budgets. The sense that I'm trying to give you is, and I think this is to Trustee Lightgib's point, if there's 10 primary objectives, how do I know when I vote to approve this that the sidewalk and the rear entrance are A and B, right?
I don't understand what you just said.
What I'm saying is if there's 10 things that need to get done over the next 5 years, and we have to prioritize them in how we spend the money, when we spend that money, how do I know definitively that these 2 projects are A and B on that list of 10 items? Because we've not gone through and sorted them all.
Well, there's a road schedule, there's a sidewalk schedule.
Yeah.
This would be
There's
the
a schedule.
long-term, this would be the long-term
Yeah,
plan that I would
There's
like,
always been a schedule, there's
that I would
schedules.
like to
Yeah.
adopt through resolution and have something publicly available that's accessible online.
Okay, that's great going forward. We're here
So,
right now.
But I understand, but what
Yeah.
I'm stressing is, I think, Mayor Lightgib, your reservation is the understanding that this is with the idea of moving forward with 2 projects of many, where we've not done the prioritization, and I think what you're asking for is that prioritization.
I think that's.
That's incorrect.
Well, even if it's been prioritized, it's the idea of having it publicly available, adopted as resolution, and fully understood by
These
the
have been
public.
discussed publicly, they've gone out to, my goodness, I can't even begin to tell you.
At this point, there's,
Maybe you weren't in
would have
the
been
meetings.
one road project due to being backed up for 6 years, we are technically 6 years behind schedule, so there's 6 projects back to back that should be done this year, if we're able to follow through with the schedule that we
Okay.
have.
Let me direct, the road schedule, the sidewalk schedule, the equipment schedule, no, they are not on the website. They have never been on the website. There's been no request to put the schedules on the website.
So let's put them on the
We
website.
can put those
Put it
on
all
the
out there.
website. That's not a
Absolutely.
problem.
100%.
But they do exist, and they are
Of course, they
reviewed
always
every
exist.
year.
Justin, do you have a copy of those schedules?
I do. I helped to manipulate the one that Frank Galusha prepared about the vehicles, and I've seen the other ones as well. And where, Zach, you asked, how do we get this done if we don't kind of draw a line in the sand and start it, right? And we're too delayed on all of these projects. I think the answer is in formally adopting a plan based on those schedules. And so now we have those schedules that a couple of people know about in the DPW, in the office. We need to bring those back to the board, say that, apart from one particular year's budget, we've got to say, this is how we're going to do things over the next 5 to 10 years. And we need to adopt a resolution to accept that as a board. And then when we're looking at the budgets, we start with that. It's not enough just to have the reserves. The reserves are just a snapshot right now, and they're meaningless without that overall plan that the board takes and adopts.
But isn't that technically what the budget, you're doing with that budget? So when I propose a project, moving through the budget process, and it sticks through that budget up to the time of adoption, isn't that basically the same thing as what you're saying?
The budget is 1 year also. So what we're talking about are 3 different things. We've got reserves, we've got multi-year capital plans, we've got budgets. The budget is what we're doing this particular year, which has to be put in the context of the multi-year capital plan, which is the schedule, maybe refined a little bit and adopted by the board.
Okay,
And then the reserve is the buffer to help us to ensure that we are on track with those goals and planning.
Yeah.
We're missing a couple of those pieces, which is why I've been uncomfortable with the last 2 years' budgets and why I'm still uncomfortable operating under the tentative budget that we have right now. I don't think we're going to get all this in place for this year, but I think that we can do quite a bit better, and Mr. Marshall has a suggestion to do better. I would like to get that in place before we decide to spend, we're talking about $30,000 of expenses at this meeting or so, and you've got the, let's say 16 by the time that we get these bonds or bans, and then we're talking about another 20 for the chair. It adds up, and if we keep approving things piecemeal, we're not going to get to the place that we want to get to make things more sustainable.
Yeah, no, I would love to have a replacement schedule for everything so we can move forward with a clear, direct path. But unfortunately, we're so far off
it's
track.
gone, and well before, like, this has been for years.
Yeah.
So I agree with every single thing you're saying. I do. I think, we're at the here and now, and we have items before us. I think, what I'm thinking now too, let's put together a DPW presentation, soup to nuts, and let's see how many years ahead we can roll it out. Let's do that, okay? This, not tomorrow, I'm saying going forward, let's do that. Let's do it. We will do it, okay? We already have a lot of the pieces in place anyway. We already have equipment schedules that have been deferred. We're going to wrap it in going forward. What does that look like going out 2, 3, 5 years, maybe 7, You have those schedules already. But what we'll do is we'll consolidate all of it, and we'll bring that back to the board so the board can have a full understanding. Would that be helpful?
Certainly helpful.
Okay.
And I think
And then we can make financial decisions
the
based on
starting path to one aspect of a long-term capital plan, right, in a long-term plan. We'll then have to make decisions as to which of those are maintenance versus improvements in projects and capital projects, how they get funded, general versus debt, right? And or reserves. So this is sort of long-term stuff.
And that material already exists, so what we'll do is we'll put
Yeah,
it
it's
together.
presented to the board at the beginning of the budget.
Yeah, that already is in existence, so we'll be able to do
So the
that.
idea would be, and this goes into the budget item as we roll forward, is the idea would be to have a long-term capital plan that adopted guides us on these budget items so that we properly fund everything we need to fund, whether or not it's reserves, capital projects through bans or revenue.
Absolutely.
Or maintenance.
I think we're in agreement, and I think, we're just
General
looking at,
appropriations.
we're looking at the clock.
No, I understand,
So,
but all this blend leads into the tentative budget.
It sure does, it sure does. And so we still have the quote before us from Bernie Donigan. And so, what are your thoughts, Lily?
Give me a time frame. Could it be deferred for a week? In order to get names? Justin, would you?
I don't know why we want to
get
bid
more
it.
names
I don't
and bring them
understand
in?
the bidding at all.
Somebody
Well,
has
if, I'm just going to be quite frank.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
If you want to delay it a week, that's fine, the board, someone else needs to call financial advisors. I do not have the
yeah, I
time.
have the time.
That was my
We are
next question.
flat
I don't have
out
like-
right now. We are so flat out.
No, it just can't happen. I can't make the time.
The
No.
other challenge to this, just the way I see it, is the work that we need to do to build up my understanding, to know that project A and B are actually the right projects to take on for debt for next year, is probably nearly impossible to do in the time period necessary, which means either they don't get done or they do get done. If they don't get done, we lose some money. That's not a good thing. It may not be the order of events that at the end of the long-term planning I would have necessarily suggested. I don't know that. Obviously, it's a project that needs to be done, the village hall needs to be done. So I'm willing to move it forward, but it is a very difficult decision, because I would much prefer for any major project like this that's being funded through bonds to have a adopted resolution of long-term capital plans, that we lay it all out the way we've just talked about today. And I think if there's any one thing we should be thinking about for next year's budget, it's how do we do that?
I think both of you have made your points consistently and thoroughly, okay? And I think, in the interest of time,
Sure.
we do kind of have to move forward here. I would also just like to say that the projects that are identified now for funding have been prioritized. You okay? Oh, I don't get any lozenge, I know. Come on. They have been identified as a priority by previous boards and administrations. So this isn't something coming, they have been identified by previous boards and administrations as priorities for our village. So regardless of where we are now, sitting here today, looking at these, it isn't as though they just came out of the ether. They are part of what was part of the schedule, am I correct? That has been deferred. We had COVID, so this isn't something that has somehow fallen down the list on a priority, am I correct?
Yes.
This
No,
is
if
something
anything,
that's,
it's zoomed up.
it's come up the list on a priority.
Yeah, I mean, it's been high priority for 5 years.
5 years,
You
yeah.
know? And here's the thing, I agree with both of you.
Yeah.
And what you're proposing, because that would make my life a lot simpler.
Sure.
Going through this process every year of proposing and pitching, I feel like a salesman repeating myself
Mm-hmm.
on a yearly basis of all the things that we need and want in that shop and to get done around this village for you guys.
Mhm.
You know, this isn't my own village, this is your guys, it's not mine. And I'm just trying to get work done here. So to make things simpler on me, I would love to have it. We are so far away from that. And that's what we're trying to establish by having all this money to be able to start collecting.
But we're
And being-
we're not that far away from it. I disagree with you, because we have these schedules, we have the roadwork schedules, we have all this stuff. But what we need to do, and I agree, we consolidate it, we put it in the package, we have the resolution, we bring this all back to the board, everybody sees how this rolls out, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years out. You see how the equipment is aging out. Well, that's a whole other issue that you will be happy to educate the board on about that at some
I
point.
should have specified, if we do not finance it the way that you're proposing, then yes, it will be far out to be able to afford.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that we're all on the same page and we're in agreement on this. I think it is going to make all of our lives a lot better and
For sure.
make the village more sustainable, and that's going to be a great step. I realize that we're quite a ways away from achieving that. My concern is that I have a lot of problems with the tentative budget that is currently approved. And I feel that by making these concessions and approving these expenses, we're essentially saying that's okay. And I understand if others say we definitely want to go in this direction. I don't mind that. For me personally, I'm going to draw a line in the sand here and say that, no, I really want to call a halt to this and make sure that, I think a couple of weeks is reasonable to wait and approve these expenses until we've got a better document in place that makes sure that we're going in the right
And
direction.
so the action item would be, and give us the action item that you all would like to see to bring you to the point, to bring it back, to look at spending this money with Donegan. What are the actual action items?
What I want to see is the tentative budget as described by Mr. Marshall in front of this board, so that we can have a vote on that. And I think that if we have a vote on that, then we're clear to actually assess all of these, this $30,000 that we're looking at in this meeting. That could be Monday, that could be Tuesday next week.
But
That's all.
the money's coming out of the current budget.
I would propose you take it out of the current budget.
Yeah,
But
this is not-
that's here nor there, and it's not 30, well, you're looking at 5,000 on it.
Yeah, you're looking at
I think
5,000.
what Mayor Lightgev was saying, correct me if I'm wrong.
Trustee
He's
Lightgev,
trustee
sorry.
Lightgev. I happen to be the mayor.
She's
Yeah,
the mayor.
yeah, just a point.
Sorry, I'm trying to talk to, I was thinking about referencing,
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay.
So I think what Trustee Lightgev's thinking here is if we're going to spend $16,000 or whatever the total is to Donegan Associates, then do it with the understanding that you're actually going to move forward on bonds. And right now, the tentative budget, I don't believe includes the cost of those bonds in the line
It
items.
doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to.
Well, it doesn't have to, but it should, because we have to pay for it
Well,
with revenue.
You wouldn't be paying anything.
Yeah, why don't you just take a moment
No,
and
because
talk
you issue a
us
ban,
through the
you don't
process
have to
of
make a
this.
ban payment in your first year. You can roll all the expenses of getting the ban, everything into your ban, okay? You can carry a ban for 5 years. So your first year, when that ban comes due, no payment, you
No
don't
payment.
have to make a payment, you can roll it. That is one of the reasons why we are looking at the back entrance that way and South Street, because there's grants associated with those. You can't count the grant money, I can't, one of your questions was, why isn't it not showing as a revenue? It's not measurable at this time. That grant could be 2 years out before we receive it from the dormitory. So I can't count on, I don't want to put revenue into the budget when I don't know when it's going to show.
Yeah, and expand, just expand very quickly on that. So when, yay, we got a $100,000 grant. Okay, well, we front the money for the grant, and then we reimburse. And so what we look at is that window of when we would be reimbursed. And the state's actually trying to be better on it.
Right.
They're trying to have it to be maybe 18 months at the most that we get back. They haven't been very good about it. That's a window for us.
Okay.
Okay.
So you don't have to accommodate in this budget, I wouldn't be putting a ban payment.
You don't have to.
You don't have
You
to.
should. So here's my thought. So let's say you get a ban that you don't have to pay on for a year,
Mhm.
okay? In a year's time, then you turn it into a bond.
I wouldn't turn it into a bond in
Okay, so then what do you do at the end of the year?
Because, you're looking at 2 ban issuances, one for
Okay.
South and Wood.
So
South
let's
Wood
focus
is
on the
the,
south.
Let's let Dorothea go through this.
okay, so the ban for the back entrance is a very minor ban
Mhm.
in the big picture. Okay, so let's say we're banning 225,000. We get 100,000 back on the grant.
Mhm.
When the 100,000 comes, we pay that off on the grant, on the ban.
Mhm.
We roll that ban. Maybe by that time, if the board wanted to put money into reserves for building repair, we take that money out of reserve and then pay down the grant.
You're exactly where I want to go, which
That's
is.
good, because that's,
That's,
but then we could possibly pay that off within the 5 years and not keep that ban and roll it into a bond. You keep
Okay, so
rolling.
you get that period of time. Here's what I would like to do. If ever you're taking on future debt that requires reserves to pay it down, right? Have that be budgeted into a reserve line item today specific to that band. So if you want to take out $750,000 to fix a road, and that's going to be banded,
Mhm.
then if 5 years down a year or 2 down the road, we have to start paying it down, right?
Mhm.
Then you should budget into your reserves today for the next year, the cost of that into this budget to put into a reserve line item to pay that first year. And then the next year, you put into reserves the amount to pay the next amount. And then as you move forward, you're putting into this budget for this year, the payments that are necessary to pay on that band so that you don't have to issue a bond. And you start it in year 1 with reserves. You don't wait a year, because otherwise you're stealing money and putting yourself into debt
That's
down the road.
Great, but I can only put in the budget what is measurable and obtainable. And without knowing the amount, not knowing the amount we're going to ban and the cost of the ban,
Mhm.
without talking to the financial advisors, I have nothing in front of me. So for the road project, I couldn't even tell you what a yearly cost or whatever we were planning to put in, because it could be 30-year debt. So I need the numbers from them. I need them to run those numbers.
Right, okay, so let's go back
Which
to,
goes back to what the actual item that's on the agenda in front of us
Correct,
for an additional
but I see
$3,000.
where you're going. With the little one, yes, we could say, you know what, let's get the ban, when the grant comes in, we pay the 100,000 back on the ban,
for the big one, how much money do we have for the road project coming in from a grant or? CHIPS?
100,000.
100,000.
So for the big one, not the village, but
For
the
the
road.
Southern we got
Okay,
100,000.
What's the quote?
Well, that's adding in Sutherland, and now we're just looking at Southern.
No, well,
Yes, for Sutherland,
Southwood.
for Southwood,
Yep.
construction and engineering costs, we're looking at a minimum of $750,000.
All right, we're gonna get 100 grand back.
correct.
So now you got 650.
Well, there's other pieces to that, and that's
Okay.
why you're going to want to, here's the thing, the hook. You do the sidewalks right away,
Mhm.
okay? So we submit to the dormitory right away. Once we get that sidewalk portion, the pictures are taken, everybody's happy, the mayor can go get more grants towards that project. So we're hoping that it's not 750,000. So as we get these grants, we pay down that ban and keep it until we get to the end. And then we bond whatever is left. So that's going to be an ongoing process to try to reduce that cost. But we need to start. And I need
So my
numbers.
biggest concern is that we're spending money, right, and issuing debt without a line to build reserves to pay off that debt in the budget for next year. And I don't think it should be, because we don't know what the final cost is going to be. There's some amount that we're going to have to pay for that is pretty reasonable in size. And we can estimate low if we want to. If it's 650 cost, 750 minus 100, maybe we get another 50, put 600 in, amortize it over 10 or 15 years. Something, maybe Donegan Associates comes back and says, let's do a 30-year instead. Okay, great, we'll make the adjustment lower then, but let's plan to pay these things off. And the way you pay them off is to put it on the budget and you build a reserve. You build a reserve for road projects, you build a reserve for the village.
Which is fine, because we're establishing those reserves, they don't exist, and we're reallocating the one reserve the general has into those funds appropriately. That was the goal for this year, because everything's so tight, we didn't add anything into the additional reserve.
There's not enough money in those reserves to finance this project, so we
No,
know,
there's no enough
and we
money.
know that we're not going to allocate 500,000 or even $250,000 into this project. It's going to be some number, 750 minus the 100 that we get brought in, maybe an extra 50, and maybe some amount of the reserves gets pushed over. So, okay, 500, 600,000, let's pay that over 10 years and amortize it and throw it in here with a reasonable interest of 2.5%. And you can figure out those numbers and you can put that into a line item and bill it and add it to the revenue. And if you're saying these things need to be done and it can't be done in this revenue that we have now, then we have to raise revenue to cover it.
Okay, so I have a question. Because we have, how many more payments do we have left on the last bond? Two? Three payments left. How do we do it now?
We have it in our budget to pay.
Yeah.
So once
Because
those
we got
drop
the
off,
numbers.
once those funds drop off, the
Right.
board has choice. They can move it towards projects or move it towards reserves, wherever they want to move those debts.
Mhm.
We also have a lease payment that's dropping off
Mhm.
in a couple of years as well.
Mhm.
So our debts are mostly almost dropping off our books.
Mhm.
So those are funds that should be moved into reserves.
So then that's this type of thing in the budget that we need to see, right? So right now, if I'm not mistaken, the debt service on the appropriations
It's
is
close to 100,000.
100,000. How much debt's left?
I think we have, like I said, 3 payments on the bond, which would be about 150 plus the interest. And I can't tell you on the truck. I have to look. We've been paying 21,000. I think it was a 10 years, so it's getting close.
Okay, so then what I'm trying to get at is the debt service that we have listed here for next year in the tentative budget is $52,000. That's just the remaining payments, right?
That's this year's payments.
Right, but that's not building any additional reserves for.
No, that's just dropping off that,
That's the amount that once this debt's paid off, it's gone. And that-
correct.
Okay, so there's no additional amount in the budget for appropriations to cover the future debt that we would take on that we're authorizing Donegan
Not at this time.
to.
There has to be.
That's what needs to happen, right? So this speaks to trustee Lightgib's comment, which is we're approving a cost that isn't put in the budget. We're approving debt, a lot of debt, that isn't in the budget, that we're not building any reserve for. So how do we cover that? And to spend this money with what would eventually be a significant tax increase later and not even know what it's going to be, right? So this is the challenge.
So we need a line item for future debt that we don't know.
So one of the things,
I mean, is that how, help me with
I don't-
this?
I don't
We
think
need
so.
to fund,
You know?
I think everybody at the table agrees we need to fund reserves.
Mhm.
That has never been off the table. The problem has been funding reserves while maintaining services.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, that hasn't happened in over 10 years.
this is the revenue problem. And the way you go back to your our constituents and residents and say, hey, this is a major problem. Look at this document we just adopted, a long-term capital plan that has all these things in it. And look at the debt we're going to have to assume. And we want to start putting this money into reserves now, rather than waiting another year or two, or doing project by project, year by year into the budget. So a 10-year problem that the village has had, we've got to figure out how to fix. And it's going to be, should be fixed with some combination of revenue and a lot of goodwill that we impart on the community for things that we haven't done for a very long time. So what I understand, and this is, I guess, the direction that I go with this. I absolutely think we're going to have to take on some amount of debt to get some of this stuff done. I don't necessarily know, but I'm going to take the work of prior boards to suggest that these two projects are the next two priority projects. So if I defer to that statement as factual, okay, then we've got to get this done. But the problem with this budget, and I would love, excuse me, this is the key point. I would love everybody in this room on the board to agree that this budget doesn't account for the costs that we're planning on spending. And this budget needs to. This budget has to put in reserves funding for the projects that we're willing to take on debt for. I don't care the priority.
It was part of the budget I funded initially at the beginning of the year. In the beginning of the budget process,
Mhm.
I threw money into reserves. I had said.
But they're not there now.
No,
Right.
no, because we could not.
There was, it would have been, actually would have been fiscally irresponsible because you wouldn't be able to provide services.
No,
if you
because
had done that.
it was dumb.
Under the revenue that you were receiving. Not, so you could put any appropriation down you want and have to have revenue to match. But
Mhm.
a certain degree of revenue hikes is unfeasible unless you do the work behind it to support.
I understand she's doing this at the direction of the board.
Certainly, I respect where we've
Yeah.
been. I'm coming to this.
Yeah, we're here and we're right now.
We're here when we're here right now.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I have a question then. So if we're in agreement, I don't know if we are or not, but it seems like maybe we're in agreement that if we're going to take on debt for these projects, and these projects are critical, then we should have funding to pay for that debt for the next year, right? And that doesn't seem to be a part of the budget. So now if Mr. Donegan, if the Donegan firm can't get these numbers to us, he's not going to be able to, once we issue this invoice, or once we sign this check, he's not going to give us the answers tomorrow. So how do we get a budget in place for the village that includes some hypothetical amount of debt service before he actually does his presentation? I have no idea.
I'll give you a very simple mechanism, and it's take the amount of rough estimate of debt that we're probably going to assume. What that project's 216,
Yeah.
we've got the 750, but you got 100,000 on each of them coming in, right?
Mhm.
So 200. So take 750 minus 200, maybe throw in an extra 50 because
I would.
somebody said we might get some more money.
Yeah.
So that's 500,000. Figure we pay it off over 5 years or 10 years. But the problem here with saying 10 years or 5 years, I'll just lay out the problem of 5 and 10 years. the longer you drag these things out and the more priorities we have as we stack them up, the longer they just keep stacking and stacking and stacking. So picking 5 years or 10 years, you could pick 30 and it'd be a really small amount relative to the 10 and the 5, but it's not doing you any justice because you're just going to have to keep stacking on stacking on
No, I
top.
think we understand,
Yeah, okay, so where I'm getting at with this, I would like to see with a project of this size, thinking about the budget, probably a 10-year window. It doesn't have to be perfect. So you could just simply take a flat amount, 500,000, divide by 10, it's not accounting for interest, and just say we need 50 grand in the budget as a line item reserve for future debt.
Right. And we can adjust it. We know it's not going to be zero. Right now, we've got zero, so.
Might need to be higher,
Yeah.
but at least we start building reserves for these projects into the budget.
So in the past, nothing was really budgeted until, in this instance, the bond would be completed.
Until we got the number, well,
Until you got the actual numbers.
until we got the actual numbers and we got the
And we
payment
need to
plan
get
from
them
them.
from this firm.
Right.
Right, we
So
got,
that
they
will-
told us,
Or another.
right, they came in, they made their presentation, we told them how much we wanted, they said, this is your payment schedule, and that was established.
Mhm.
You know, putting a reserve together for future
Mhm.
is fine,
Mhm.
we just need to have
Well,
that idea.
we also talked about, repurposing the reserves with essentially broader language that would enable us to access the money to front for the grants, get the money goes back, so that's another component of what we're
Correct.
looking at,
I agree, and I think if this is a bond where we need 500,000, it may be appropriate for the village to take on 750,000 and have the excess money from the bond put into a fund specifically and only used for priority projects that are identified in a long-term plan, adopted through resolution, that have matching funding, right? Something to that extent, but we're not there right now. But I think where I am anyway is that if we can get an agreement by the members of the board to put a line item in this budget that accounts for future debt service that we take on, 50,000 maybe is a.
There's not a number for future debt service, what I can do is create a reserve for
That
future
would
debt.
be
We would have to be,
It would have to be a reserve.
reserve.
Well, it wouldn't be
Right.
what I was thinking is that reserve seems to be kind of a special term, which entails that there are certain procedures for putting it in and taking it out. I wonder if we could just have a line item for those two projects.
I don't think you're allowed to do that by the
We'd have-
comptroller.
Yeah, we'd have.
Because
to
it's not an
control the
existing
silence.
debt. You can't, the way to,
It would always
you have to
be-
do it into a reserve
Yeah.
for future debt. It's, again, that's going to turn or having to direct
Yeah.
the language. It's not a difficult process. It seems to be a difficult process over the last 10 years to get these reallocated, but it really isn't. It's just setting up a reserve like we did with catastrophic. And it,
For each project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
no, you just need
Just
one.
one, okay.
You just create one for future debt or whatever for,
Okay, so then I'd like the board to, let's direct Jeff Turner and Dorothea to take a look at that language to create that particular reserve
Yeah.
based on the controller's guidelines for what would be required.
I'd say no.
That would be the action item, I think.
Is that a motion or is that?
Well, no, we can
or
just
do you want
direct,
me
it's
to-
a direction from the board, that's all, we don't need a motion, it's just a direction.
okay, I'll talk to Jeff on
Yeah,
that reserve.
I think that's great.
Or
No.
future project reserve.
or something, yeah. Vague,
Either way,
keep it
yeah.
fairly
One or-
vague.
one or
If it's
several
future-
reserves.
If, I'll talk to Jeff, I'll find out the right vehicle, because we might already have it established with what we requested him to.
I know, I was thinking that too, because some of the other language that we were looking at.
With the understanding that the tentative budget, we will try to, in either the prior or a new tentative budget, put $50,000 into reserve funding for long-term debt assumed for projects such as this. I'm okay moving forward knowing that we're going to start paying for it in advance rather than on the back end. But it does mean that it may have to come with revenue increases or cuts to other things because we're appropriating another $50,000. But I don't want to approve debt, right?
Well, then my suggestion, until we get done talking budget
Yep.
tonight, let's move this to last.
Yeah.
And then can we, let's do something we all can agree that needs to happen.
I think we all. I think this was a great hour discussion.
Yes.
So
Can
thank
we
you.
agree I have the quotes for the fire repair. I'm going to declare this an emergency because although they closed it up
Yeah.
there, we really don't have time to go out for bidding, and it's specialty work. I can see out, that means squirrels and animals can see in. I don't want any more damage done.
We're talking about,
For the fire damage.
Yep.
We're
Yeah.
getting a check from the fire department.
Not from the fire insurance.
It'd be nice if they did. From the insurance company, I ran the numbers, what this is including, just so to go over real quick. It's the fixing of the roof, the soffit in that whole area, the downspout, everything that was affected outside. It's painting in the village hall here. It's painting upstairs, and it's new rug upstairs. Okay, so that's what has been approved by the insurance company as a point. They're covering the door, they've already paid ServPro that portion, they're holding back the 4,000, it's just Mayor and me saying, we want the 4,000.
We're just simply approving you spending the money to then get it back.
Yeah, we're just restoring the building back to,
I'll make a motion to.
But typically, when we have a process, when we have something happen, we have to send everything out to bid. That's the state controllers.
Emergency measure
So
allows.
now we're using emergency measure, and so we're bypassing that process of sending everything out to bid and waiting for all these bids.
and
to come back.
I couldn't do the emergency measures because I had to make sure what we were getting from the insurance company before I went to the board. And I just got the numbers, so.
I got a motion.
Okay, so did you make a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Marshall?
Aye.
Trustee Lanfair?
Aye.
Trustee Lightgev?
Aye.
Mayor Plummer?
Aye.
I knew there was something we could agree on.
All right.
The handicap chair, this is, I brought to the board, I had the Legion here explaining that their chair is not in great shape. It's a constant burden. It's sort of working right now, but that's very limited. It's falling apart. What I'm requesting, the board authorized a use of fund balance of up to 20,000. The lowest quote was 17 from West Side. Yeah, for a 400-pound limit on the chair. So I would like to make that happen because that affects the accessibility for the Legion below.
For anybody going
Yeah,
down there.
it's a necessity for the village hall.
It's in
It's not.
compliance with the ADA
Is this
laws.
last year's budget, not next year's?
Well, what will happen is the expense will go in,
Mhm.
it'll show as a negative. If by chance, and I'm anticipating, and this is really early, I'm anticipating we'll have funds to cover it within the budget, but if not, it would come out of fund balance.
Okay.
And we have a healthy fund balance.
Will that chair still be necessary if the back door?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the back door is not a handicap entrance.
No,
Okay, it's not, okay.
this is actually a restoration project
Okay.
relative to an historic building, one, and
Mhm.
two, it makes it a safer egress. It does not make it handicap access compliant.
So the chair needs to happen.
The chair is in
We have-
compliance with
we
ADA
don't
law.
have any funds for it other than our own.
No, we don't.
This
matter of
was
fact, that
unforeseen, it just happened.
This chair was a grant that we received from Monroe County at one time under, it was a special thing. We don't even qualify anymore because we're,
There's no other grants or anything like that
No,
that might be
no.
available to us. folks?
no, it just needs to happen. It's a maintenance issue. I mean,
Yeah.
So it sounds like it exceeds a budget line for this year's budget though, right? If we're going to have a negative and then find a way to
you
cover
would
it.
have a negative. I would try to cover, well, I want to see what happens. I'll know better at the end of April. I'll have a better idea if we're able to cover it with the current funds, but the anticipation, I would say ahead of time, is to plan to use fund balance. If by chance we don't need fund balance, great, and that's what I'm anticipating, but it has to happen.
When will
We
we
have to,
know?
like I said, I have to see how the rest of this month goes, and I do the financials.
So it'll be after the tentative budget? Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Or I know one already has been. What is the potential excess amount that you might have to take out of fund balance to do it?
That's the question I can't answer. Right now, I'm hoping for a surplus in this budget, so I don't have to take out of
What's the highest amount that it would be a risk that you can anticipate?
18,000.
Oh, so it could be the whole thing.
Could be the whole
Could be
thing.
the whole thing.
Could be the whole thing, it could be nothing.
So you're waiting on like sales tax receipts?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm,
that's-
Well, I want to see how everything else performed. I have some other numbers that came in. I'm doing March, actually.
Yeah.
If today had gone better, I would have had March done. I would have had a better idea. I'll have it done tomorrow. I really don't foresee us taking out of the fund balance, but
We have to cover our bases. We need to have a handicap access
I don't
share,
disagree.
you know,
It needs
that's
to be
the
done.
thing.
no, we got our 10,000. The good news is we did get the dividend. That was $11,000. We had other things come in as anticipated, so the numbers are looking great. We're already in a fund balance good rate.
Position, yeah.
We're not spending more than we're bringing in. Life is great. So, right now in March, I'm telling you, it looks fabulous, but I can't tell you because I haven't balanced April.
Can you tell them what the dividend is about?
The dividend is off our workman's comp insurance.
Just so you know what the
That's
dividend
not a
is.
revenue you count on because dividends are declared. It's not something measurable. So we never include it in our budget. It's kind of like a bonus. So that helps cover any revenue line that didn't perform.
With the risk that some of it might fall into next year versus last year, you presented it could be as much as 18, but you're not anticipating it. Is there an amount that we should put into this year's tentative budget that accounts for that risk? 5,000, 10,000? And if it doesn't happen, then in this budget, it goes to.
No, you wouldn't count for it in next year's budget because it would be a appropriation out of this year's budget.
Okay, so said slightly
Doesn't
different.
carry up, it's this year.
If we're gonna spend down the fund balance, that's, say, 10 grand gone, I'd like to make sure I can get it back by having it be in this year's budget as a surplus, is what I'm suggesting. Like, if we just keep going down the same road.
You
every
can't
single
budget
year,
a surplus.
Can't budget a surplus.
No.
But you can budget a reserve.
You can budget a reserve.
Bingo, so we have.
See,
a
that
reserve.
goes back to budgeting for maintenance for the building.
Well, this is maintenance for the building, so we
Which-
probably have a reserve line for maintenance. for
We
the
have
building.
infrastructure in there, we have a couple lines, building maintenance reserve we want to establish.
So let's take in the reserve line for appropriations for this year coming up, an amount that we're all comfortable with that could account for the amount that is in excess. And hopefully we don't need it. If we don't need it, then it's excess reserve to future building maintenance.
What I would point out, the reallocation of the existing reserve, we're anticipating putting some money into that reserve, so we would be actually doing that with the
Yeah.
reallocation. We're just waiting on the numbers, we're waiting on the language
On
from
language.
Jeff, so we can allocate those.
Okay, so what I.
That's already in the pipeline.
What I'm thinking is, or what I'm thinking I'm hearing is last year, this year ending, we'll have some funds that we can allocate to the reserves.
Correct.
And so when you're referencing spending fund balance, it's just simply chipping down a little bit what we would otherwise put into reserves for
Correct.
last year.
When I get through
Okay.
April and I'm looking at May,
Okay.
I'm going to come to the board, and if things are looking fabulous and Jeff
Yeah.
gets these reserves set up,
Mhm.
I'm going to suggest that the board put following into a vehicle reserve, the following into this. Since we're looking so good, we have money we can move.
The amount in reserve that would then go into reserve might be a little bit less based on the amount you chip down the
Correct.
fund balance, but it's still all on the last year's.
Mhm.
Okay, with that understanding, at least for me, knowing that it has to be done, we've gotten bids, it's 17 grand, I'm okay moving forward, none of that cost, to me anyway, goes on to next year's.
No, it won't go into it.
Okay, so I've reached it.
Okay, yeah, Lily, yeah.
This is a different company that is installing the chair.
Yes,
Yeah.
the
Does
company,
anybody take the old equipment and give you any kind of kickback or anything for that?
no, it's fully,
Not even
nobody
just
wants,
metal, anything?
we might
I
get
mean,
it.
technically, it's ours, we can take the metal.
Okay, let's do it. I like recycling.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I don't think a company would take it because it's stressed. They wouldn't want that financial or.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of liability.
We couldn't
Yeah.
sell it as used equipment,
Yeah.
is really what you're saying.
Yeah, I
That
see.
it's past its lifespan because of the wear and tear
Yeah, rid of it for-
on it. And
Scrap,
so,
yeah.
scrap metal, yes, recycling, yay, let's see
It's all
what we can
steel,
do.
though, it's
that.
not worth much, but it's.
Let's just say we're gonna do that, that's
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Before we vote on those things, so it sounds like we're close to voting on this. Do we have a consensus about what the next step is for the tentative budget to make sure that's moving forward?
No, we're going to move to.
We have 5 minutes on that.
Well, I would like to know what we're doing with the tentative budget before we vote on these expenses.
Well, this one is coming out of this year's budget. I mean, this is,
I'm okay putting it backwards. I know.
You know, I know where you're going, but I mean, we,
Like, you may not be comfortable with that. I'm okay putting it on last year and starting fresh, given that it's a project that has to occur.
mhm.
It was not something we were hoping to see this year at all.
Right, but
Perhaps we should have it on a 7-year replacement schedule.
Well, yeah.
There we go, we'll factor it right in.
Yeah, we're gonna have
Multi-year
to
capital
address.
plan
There
for
we
building
go.
and expenses, right?
that sounds great. Yeah. We'll get that done soon.
Okay.
All right,
All right.
note to self.
Any-
You want to make a motion?
I was about to, unless anybody had any other questions.
No, I don't, I'm good.
Okay, yeah, we're good,
Trustee Lickett?
we're good.
Go ahead, I don't have any
I'll
other
just
questions.
make a motion to approve the chair as presented on last year's.
Okay. is
I'll
there-
second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Lickett,
Aye.
trustee Lampier,
Aye.
trustee Marshall,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right.
Okay.
All right, let's go to budget.
Speed,
Okay.
quick.
Okay, speed dating on the budget.
I think we've got, we're not going to
Got some-
have time for a deep
I
dive.
know, but
Can we do one other thing before we get to the budget? Just so that it's not.
We just need quick approval on this form, is a new form for the banners and flags that are hung, just because we didn't have an actual form for people to fill
now we
out.
had a form.
So it's, now we have a form.
Oh.
There's been a lot of guesswork when people ask to hang banners in their village.
I read it online already.
Yeah,
We just,
So this will help out. We have a marquee
Yeah.
board, the message board that's down south and East Jefferson, and people. We'll request to put messages on and we'll ask them to fill it out, we'll date it, so then we kind of keep a system going with that. We're ahead of the banners with all the activity coming up. We have requests for them. Not sure if it's necessary to have you guys approve the graphic that would be on the banner, but it might not be a bad idea either. That way, there's nothing flying that
Previously-
someone's not gonna like.
we always look
Yeah,
at
the
banners.
process came through
Yeah.
the trustees. So this is a change.
Okay,
This is a change. Previously, if someone wanted to put up a banner, they made an application to the trustees.
no, it's still that.
No, it's
No, it's
still
still
that.
going, it's just putting it on a piece of paper.
Got it.
So now there's an application, but we could put this online for
Yeah,
people.
because I think in the code, it was
Yeah.
actually the building inspector approved the banners
Yeah,
or
so-
something, and Steve didn't want to do that, and he was
Yeah.
presenting it to the board for their agreement. We're formalizing this, or let
Perfect.
me put, DPW is formalizing
Yeah.
this, so it's clear, the information you
Got it.
need to
Right.
approve it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it gets tricky with whether they're funded or privately funded or for
Yeah,
profit. or
exactly, so
not-for-profit, all that
this
stuff.
is a good idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
All right, so
Got it.
we can just have the board approve the form, so we can get that activated.
I have a question for you. So this just simply says, requests for banners must be received by Village Hall 2 weeks prior to the date the banner would be hung. What's to say we have a meeting then? I don't want to have to call a special meeting to approve the banner. So what if we said something to the effect of 2 weeks prior to the village board meeting, like something to where it's,
First approved by the board, then, I know what you're getting at.
We should have like 3 to 4 weeks ahead, so I can get it into a schedule.
Yeah, I mean.
And we actually should for banners, because we have so many events, and
right?
2 weeks is not enough.
Yeah.
But it isn't. I thought we could do a minimum, like say a minimum of, what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks or something?
Yeah.
I would do it
4
as
weeks
a
would give
minimum.
you at least one meeting.
I know, that's what I'm thinking,
Yeah.
because that's a good point, thank you. So how about a minimum of 4 weeks?
4
They
weeks.
could put it in 6 weeks ahead or 8
Yeah.
weeks, but that way we at least know it's going to hit a meeting cycle.
All right.
I'm sorry, you had a question, Justin?
Yeah, I just am not entirely clear, based on the way the policy is written, about what would fall under the purview of something that is political, religious, or personal, as not being allowed. Unfortunately, I feel like this might be a slightly larger discussion.
So that's fine, I just wanted to get it to you guys, so you had a copy of it,
Yeah.
mull it over,
Yeah, yeah.
discuss all parts.
Right.
This is up for you to get, to determine on.
Perfect.
I'll put it on the next board
All we
agenda.
did
Yes, let's do that.
They ripped off a lot of the stuff that was on the
Yeah.
message board application, just.
That's great.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, because the message board application was already a policy put in place by the previous
Yeah,
boards.
that there's.
Yeah, so this is just a continuation of an already adopted
I do
policy.
have
Okay.
Monroe Invitational pending
Yeah.
right now.
Well, they do it
They're
every
just
year,
waiting
we know
on
what, I mean, we've seen
Yeah,
that,
they
we've
do it
already
every
seen
year.
the Monroe, I mean, but I know what you're saying, if there's something else
We have some time, but that's currently the only pending one, so we do have a little bit.
Unless Zach wants to define what all those things are for us right now. Political,
Until-
religious, personal.
Until this
Definition.
until this is adopted, right, we just operate under the old process, and that's how
Yeah.
Monroe Invitational did it in the past.
Yeah.
So-
Just put Monroe on the next agenda.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's great, thank you. I just, to jump into the budget for 1 second, we're not going to have time to go into it. I just want to know if we're all in agreement that we would be willing to entertain the budget as defined by trustee Marshall, along with the provisions that we discussed today for some possibility for debt service. Was that it? Just the-
Yeah, I'll just very quickly say what I was trying to do. Until a resolution is adopted to appropriate new funds to the sewer, we pull them all off. I understand that means that the sewer is going to be running in the black quite a bit. So we give a tax or a rate decrease to the sewer, a significant rate decrease to make sure that's just a straight balance budget until we have a resolution that permits all those things. And I know some of it we've said we've already done. We just want to adopt it with the empirical evidence, and maybe next year will be something different. But for this year, we go with nothing new.
I mean, I'm looking at the email.
Yeah.
Maybe if we could just even very quickly, I'm looking at, this was the email you sent today?
Might have been, I did send one on Sunday.
Okay, so the employee benefit portion of the sewer appropriation should only be for the sewer wages.
So when we pulled
I'm
off,
trying to understand like the whole rationale of everything and like moving everything out and,
so the very first thing is, a lot of things got put to the sewer, and then the sewer was running in the black by 45, or in the red by 45,000. And I know it was using the fund surplus, but the idea would be, until we adopt a resolution saying, these are all the reasons why that we're putting all these things over here, don't do anything new over there, just do it as it was. That will lend itself to the sewer, okay, which is overpaid for services for many years, okay, has a fund balance, right, that's fairly significant that we were looking to tap into by 45,000. In this case, by not appropriating new funds to it, based on the current rate for the sewer, it'd be running a surplus, we figured, around 40 to 50,000. Now, things that would have to come off were all the new things, plus any portion of the benefits that was attributed to the new wages.
This was a problem, and I took the wages off, and I'm going to argue totally wrong. Sorry, you're
That's
wrong.
okay.
I'm going to tell you why. The wages are directly from the wage sheet. This determination of the portion of the wages to sewer was determined by many moons, many boards ago. So I'm just following a standard practice that was done, and those wages went up due to salary increases and additional personnel. It had nothing to do with the 22%. That is actually for the person that's on the wage sheet that I provided to the board. And that's been done, really, we've been doing that.
For 6 years, 7 years.
It's been done that way a long
Yeah.
time. And the benefits correlate to that same percentage. So that is not something new that I created in this budget. That is something that has been pre-existing.
I understand, but they're wrong. So right now, the sewer fund has maintenance, transportation, personnel expenses related to roads, vehicles, new equipment administration. The current wages that are going to the sewer fund are $66,550. That's the appropriated based on last year's, and actually last year was 62, the 2023 to 2023 budgeted was 70,657. We're looking at 66,550 in the tentative. So if we take 66,550, benefits are usually 30 to 40%, right?
No, because I broke it down to the percentage of the cost. It's the rate that we charged.
Okay, so whatever the benefits are, what I do know is that the total amount of employee benefits should not be higher than the wages they've received. And right now, the appropriated funds to the sewer in aggregate are about
It's because you had me cut,
72,000.
you had
That's
me
right,
cut.
yes.
That's why,
Yes.
because,
Yeah.
and that's the reason you said leave everything that was pre-existing, so I left everything pre-existing, then you had me cut the wages,
Yes.
which didn't make sense, and I knew I was gonna have this discussion, so I did as requested.
Yep.
I left that, but honestly, it needs to go back, and that's what I'm trying to tell you, those wages need to go back, that's the way they are apportionated. And it has nothing to do with the discussion on the other items. This was a pre-existing standard. The only difference I made with that is I broke it out between the DPW staff and the administration. So I broke it out and put Zach into a separate line, the same as I did in the general fund, just so it was consistent, instead of all being in one line. So what I did is pretty much took all of Zach's money out, because I didn't know where you're coming from taking that money out. Okay.
So let me back up and say that, maybe, and in this case, I'm wrong. So we've got 70,000 plus 80,000, so that's 150 when I include the wages for the administration.
Right,
So now we've got 150,000.
correct.
And you're saying the benefits on that 150,000, my apology if I.
Yeah, 'cause-
But the benefits on 150,000 are $60,000, $70,000?
Well, it's going between Social Security, all the different things,
Yep.
workman's comp insurance, plus the healthcare.
So it's roughly half the wages?
It's, yeah, pretty much there.
So then, if you're suggesting that that amount is accurate and we're not doing anything new, those amounts would have come down a little bit by not putting.
What I need to do is put Zach back. It's really what I need to do, because I threw him all into, I took 30,000, whatever I took.
Yeah.
I took a chunk to get you where you wanted to be, but it really, I knew that number wasn't going to be appropriate, because,
So then, let's go with the idea of put Zach back, have the benefits be right, okay? And then all the other appropriations, don't do anything with until a resolution. Part of this too is, and Zach, maybe you could speak to this, when we think about the sewer district, and we think about the total aggregate cost of the sewer district, right? Or the spending of the sewer district, we're looking at 288,000.
yes, that's what it dropped to.
I would hope that the majority of that is labor and work being done.
It is.
Under this new budget, the labor being done by maintenance and transportation personnel, DPW, would be 66,000 plus the portion of Zach's salary that goes in. So we'd be looking at 90,000.
You're also in the administration, yeah, okay.
Right, so, and that's excluding administration. We include administration here at 90,000-ish plus 80, so 170,000. So here's what I'm reading in my head. 170,000 of a $288,000 sewer budget is for administration and, no, I'm sorry, let me do it slightly the inverse. 90,000 for work being done, 200,000 is for no work being done, it's for administrative things and some of the capital things. You take out the capital stuff, like the sanitary sewers and the work that needs to be done. Half the sewer budget isn't actually work being done or material being bought. To me, 50-50 sounds a little aggressive from an administrative cost perspective. And if we're running the sewer that inefficiently, right, we got to figure out something else. I don't want to put any new costs onto the sewer. I want to figure out a way to get the actual work being done and the material being bought to be in excess of 50% of the sewer budget. And with this budget, after taking all that stuff off, we're only at 50.
Does that include all of our operating costs as well?
It does.
Okay, so fuel,
No, because fuel was taken away. We took away all that. You moved all that back to general.
Okay, so then I'll see that point of utilities, diesel, gas, and highway garage maintenance.
All that, see, that's the problem. This is why we did it this way.
Right.
Because how are you running trucks to a repair if you're not putting gas in? How are you paying for those trucks?
So let's do this. This is the way I kind of want to move forward, if it's okay with the other members of the board.
Okay, we're going to do a hard stop at 5:30.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds good.
I'm already late.
All that should be done by resolution, and we should look at the empirical evidence that supports that. That's what the comptroller wants, it's what NICOM wants. I know you have the data, but I want to adopt it through resolution, so that way when a sewer participant or somebody in the district comes back and says, how did you figure that, and why are these costs this way, we can support them with a resolution with evidence that says this is how. I know you have it, I'm not saying that you
No,
don't.
I have,
I just want to have it be adopted through resolution.
that's
So-
fine.
And so what that may mean is for a year, for the first time ever, the sewer is running in the black so much that we give them a rate decrease and we don't tap into their general fund. Okay, fine.
Okay, thanks, I'll take a look at it, take a look.
So if we have an approximate understanding, and it sounds like we're making some changes here too, based on this conversation, what I would be looking for is a revised tentative budget along the lines of our discussion here. That's the next step. So Dorothy, I know you've got a lot going on, and this is something for you to prepare. So I wanted to ask you when you think that it would be reasonable to have something.
I'd like to jump in on that, because we are absolutely flat out. We really, I know we have a deadline this week on a grant. We have the Arbor Day, Earth Day event on Saturday, canal cleanup. There's, just a whole bunch of moving parts. I'd like to have you guys help with the numbers, please. Can you help us? That would be great, because you guys are, working on it. Did you send out the Excels? Yeah. Can you guys maybe just run some of those, so,
I believe that we've already given enough input so that we have an understanding here. I know that we're pressured, but this needs to be done by someone who is preparing and presenting the budget. I don't think that.
You can run the numbers and send them back to Dorothea. How's that? Can you, we're just asking for some help, that's all.
So there's no capacity that I have to understand the depth of the Excel sheets and the way that you created them and prepared them for us to be able to do that. And if we need to make a motion to draft or craft that budget to get it done in time, then we should do it.
Well, then,
Hang on.
But I don't want to go down that road.
I need time with the numbers. It's not just the Excel sheets.
How about, at the last meeting, and I'm a little disappointed, I thought you guys were going to literally sit down with Dorothea and go through some of this stuff with her. That didn't happen. Can you at least sit down with her and just meet with her to go through this, and maybe with some of the spreadsheets?
Yeah, so.
I think that would at least be helpful.
What I don't understand.
Instead of, we're getting emails with, directives, and I think just sitting and having a conversation with the treasurer.
The only way things get done, though, is with specific things and action items. You go into an Excel sheet, you fix it. You don't need somebody there watching you get it done.
Actually, I do.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that only in this way
We're not being
because.
combative, we're just trying to move this forward.
What I'm trying to say is because the impacts, so like with the salary impact, you don't, when you give me a directive, you don't understand automatically where it's hitting.
Right.
That's why if I have someone in front of me and we have the spreadsheets in front of me, okay, I'm going to make this change, this affects here.
Yep.
Right.
And then we got to go over to general.
Yep.
So just so when I put it all on paper, because when I get it all on paper, then I got to move it to the computer.
So let me ask you a
So
question.
what I'm proposing is this will collapse the time frame to do this. This isn't a negative thing. This is a good
If
thing.
you guys could, an hour or two, just sit with me,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
otherwise I'm giving you,
Okay.
And I would think that would be
If we
helpful.
could then, as a next step, do the following. Everything we just talked about today, right? Take the cost of the backdoor project, amortize, or just take the total amount that you think we're going to spend, the 116,000, which is 216 minus 100, spread it out over 10 years and put 10 grand in reserve. Put 50
Okay,
grand
so-
in reserve,
All right.
right? Put these things in reserve over time.
I'll move the numbers into reserve. I'm going to say it's going to be next week before you see
Yeah,
anything, which leads me to the next question to the board.
When is our next meeting?
Our next meeting is the 27th. That's supposed to be organizational, adoption of the budget, plus additional agenda items. My hope was to move the budget adoption and the org to Saturday, because initially when I looked at the calendar, as I talked to you, Lily,
Yeah,
everybody tell me when they're going to be in town.
Saturday.
That
I'm
looked,
available Saturday, the 29th.
Okay, that would,
I'm not here the 27th.
I know. So
Correct.
I'm.
everybody seemed to be available on the 29th.
I
It
don't know
turns out.
if I'm available on that Saturday, sorry.
I'm not available on the
Oh,
29th.
jeez.
Okay, so that puts it back to the 27th for
Mm.
the adoption of the budget, because we can't go past May 1st. So,
And see, if we had passed the video,
I'm not here,
if
and
we
that's.
passed the video, remote video for stuff like this.
but anyway, so
Monday the 1st,
So,
We're in violation of municipal law.
are we? Okay.
Yeah.
so my question,
Yeah,
again,
11th
going
hour.
back to the work on the budget that needs to be done, what's your total time period that you think you need before talking with us and after talking with us to have something in front of us?
Why don't we start with a different question? When can you sit down and meet with Dorothea? Let's start with that first.
let me put it this way. I will do the prelim work that I feel I understand,
Yep.
okay? but I will not finalize anything because the finalization takes a lot longer than just the Excel sheets.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
Yep.
so can we plan like Tuesday morning or late Monday? I mean, I'm willing to stay after 4 to accommodate schedules,
Mhm.
but I need a body in front of me going, okay, yep, that makes sense. Okay, this is why you're not doing that.
Yep.
Because I don't want to get to budget adoption and everybody go, well, that's not what we intend. Because I'm sure when you guys opened this up and saw 42% budget increase, you had a heart attack.
Well, we dropped all the back door on 1 year versus.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I don't want to have that happen. What I want is it to be realistic.
Is Tuesday the first day that you could do that? Because I could look at,
I'm saying Monday's okay.
I could even look
I
at
could do Monday.
this weekend.
I don't know if I'll be here this weekend. I could
can't
do
do
Monday.
We have events this weekend
Monday?
too, so.
Okay,
Monday.
so Monday, let me just take a look. My Monday personal calendar is open. Let me see.
Like I said, I can be here late.
All right, my work
Either way.
calendar, just a minute. My work calendar Monday. I can make adjustments as need be. Do you want to dedicate the morning?
I'm okay with either, Dave.
What time do you get in?
Usually get in at 9, but I'll be happy to come at 8 if that'll.
Could we do 8 o'clock on Monday morning and trustee like?
That's fine with me.
Okay,
8 o'clock here?
yep.
Okay. And then my question to you is, what can we do in advance of then to make this?
I'll run this, look at those numbers. You keep saying, what can we cut? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to ask these two, there's nowhere to cut.
So what I'm hoping to do is, I understand there's nowhere to cut, and I don't really want to cut, that's not the.
No, but I will run the numbers. Let's sit down, look at the
Right.
percentages,
Yep.
and you tell me if I got it right, or if there's somewhere else.
Yep.
And really, what I'm going to ask you both to do, I know you
Yep.
have this, you want to adopt the resolution. We can put that together for Thursday, believe it or not, because I already have the wage sheet. All this is the board creating a resolution by Turner, and I can get them to do that.
Sure.
Think of at least funding gas, funding this. I left postage in there defiantly because they got to pay for their postage for
I
their.
think it's okay to put those things in. I'm okay with that.
I mean,
Because
yeah.
it follows the guidelines of what we've already said, which is you guys have punch clocks.
And it's
right?
also-
Sewer, not sewer.
Based on New York State Controller's guidelines, and we were dinged on the last audit for this, and so general had to
pay
pay
back.
back sewer, because of the
I really,
controller's
I need
findings,
some
so
of those expenses to go back where
We
they
can't-
go. That will help offset.
I'm not
your
fully
reserve.
comfortable with
But
how this is
I
going.
really need you to take a look at the line items I was pushing over.
Yep.
They're not.
If I'm not mistaken, the dinging from the comptroller was because the reserves weren't appropriately identified as to what they were for,
That was
not,
one ding,
not-
that was a separate ding.
not specific to the appropriations.
Yes, actually, it's 2 days. It
Okay.
was 2 days.
Yeah.
One for not having the plan of the reserve and getting that established
Yep.
because it was overfunded. The
Yep.
second one was, there used to be a line in the budget where Mary would just transfer a percentage, a dollar amount, and it didn't have any of the empirical evidence. What they said is either you charge it per hour or whatever happens,
Okay, good.
then that's a lot of work.
Yep.
Or you set a percentage, you
And that's
look at an
what happened.
overall aggregate,
Yep.
and that's how you do it. Like I was talking to a village today, they do the wages exactly the way we do it,
Yep.
and they just arbitrarily, 3 funds, 33, 33.
So I think what I'm hearing the mayor saying is, by not putting a percentage in for other stuff, we're continuing the pattern. And what I'm suggesting is, let's get to the point, maybe we do that and we get in for another year, but let's get a resolution on that defines how we come about that and make sure that we all are in agreement and put it on file.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, think
Yeah.
strong and hard. If there's a percentage you're comfortable at least shifting some of that responsibility back where it belongs. That's all I'm saying.
But it's
Okay.
never been.
No, it's never been, and it should be.
Okay.
And it's a
And that's
detriment.
the resolution part that I think I want to get to, that's a little bit
Right.
later than what we're going to get to.
But think of that way, that's money that can go into reserves. Okay?
So are we back for the 27th for the budget adoption?
Yes.
Date? Okay.
So
Right.
we'll miss
Too
you.
bad you said, I'm sorry.
We'll miss you.
Sandra will. I will miss being here. It'll be kind of the same because I'm going to be with my siblings, so it's kind of the same dynamic, I'm just saying.
Will,
Okay, so you guys have
I
your
won't be
date on
able to find
Monday?
Yep.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
second,
Roll call.
Trustee Lightgev.
Aye.
Trustee Lampier.
aye.
Trustee Marshall.
aye.
Mayor Plummer.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Do we have somebody coming in the meeting room behind us? Is there a PZBA?
No, no.
Okay.